Good morning. Good morning. If I could have your attention, please. Good morning. I'd like to call this last legislative breakfast of the year to order, please. Again, if we could have it quiet, I guess my voice isn't loud enough. That worked. Okay. My name is Bill Davies, the moderator for this year's series of legislative breakfasts. I'd like to begin this morning's breakfast by calling upon Representative Woody Page. Woody, you have an introduction to me.
Is Chris Young here? Oh, okay. I think most everyone knows Chris Young and his family. And in fact, some of us have actually were students of his parents and grandparents, actually. And it's my honor to, we have a resolution for him for Principal of the Year. And all of us legislators have signed on to it. And I'll be quick on reading this. It says, House Concurrent Resolution congratulating the 2023 Vermont Principal of the Year, Christopher Young. Christopher Young graduated from North Country Union High School, where both of his parents were faculty members, earned a bachelor's degree from Boston College, and followed his parents' path into the public education. And after teaching in Easton, Mass., serving as a coach and assistant principal, he came home to Vermont. And during a successful 8- and 9-year tenure as principal at respectively Craftsbury Academy and the Troy School, the voters' faith in his stewardship facilitated the passage of major construction bond votes, and Chris Young's North Country Union High School principalship began shortly prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, requiring nimble decision-making. And in the hopefully post-pandemic world, he is now addressing the mental health needs of his students. He seeks to develop trusting relationships, administers the school in a transparent manner, and in return expects accountability from the students. And beyond the North Country High School campus, he serves as the Vermont coordinator for the National Association of Secondary Schools and the Association Executive Committee, and the VPA has honored him with its highest award. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives that the General Assembly congratulates the 2023 Vermont Principal of the Year, Christopher Young, and be it further that the Secretary of State be directed to send a copy of the resolution to Christopher Young and North Country Union High School. So we're very pleased. In fact, you should come up, Chris. And if I could just have all the representatives and the senators come up, and we can officially present this to them and maybe get a quick picture of them. Receive. Do you have enough, Chris?
Yeah, I think you got 100 there.
I will also just say it's very nice that we have somebody like Chris that went to school here, grew up in the area, and actually came back to Vermont and to his roots. And we need more people like Chris to come back to Vermont and come back to Newport. So, Chris, if you'd like to say a few words, you're welcome. And here's your other copies right here.
Thank you.
Well, I thank you. It's embarrassing a bit and humbling to be up here, and I owe it all to Frank Davis. Thanks, Frank. To civics and football and all the important things in school, right? So, yeah, I was out of state at that point. I wasn't back yet, Frank. But I accept this on behalf of all the teachers and all the students and parents at North Country. It's the epitome of a community school. While we're the largest school in the area, really we can't do it without the support of all of the community and all the parents that are there. And we have an amazing staff. I love going to school each day, working with our kids. And the hard work these guys do back down in Montpelier. It doesn't almost have the work that they put in to help taxpayers and our schools. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thanks.
This morning's breakfast is being sponsored by North Country Hospital. I'd like Conklin to introduce to us the new Chief Executive Officer of the hospital. Wendy?
Thank you, Attorney Davies. Welcome, everyone. And I just want to thank Vermont's North Country Chamber of Commerce for having these legislative breakfasts during the legislative season. They're very much appreciated. We've been very busy at the hospital. Last week we celebrated National Hospital Week, hence the banner here. And I've been a face of North Country for many years, but I'm really happy to introduce our new President and CEO, Tom Frank.
Good morning, everyone. As Wendy said, last week was Hospital Week. It was also Nurses Week last week, so it was quite an exciting week last week at North Country. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and a special shout out to the legislators for taking time out of their busy schedule to be here today. Thank you. As Wendy said, I'm Tom Frank. I'm the new CEO, but I'm actually not that new to the hospital. The last 3.5 years I have been down at Rutland, but prior to that, I spent 7 years as the Chief Operating Officer at North. So it's great to be home again, so thank you. I do want to do a special thank you to the legislators for helping pass Bill S-36, the bill. Tonight, at Nurses Celebration, we do a banquet annually for all our nurses. Our CNO, Megan Sargent, mentioned the passing of the S-36, and there was basically a standing ovation. So that's how important it is for the folks at the hospital, and I can't thank you all enough for the work that you did to help sponsor that bill. So thank you very much. With that, I'll turn it back over to Bill.
Thank you. And I'm sure everyone joins with me this morning in expressing our appreciation to North Country Hospital for its generosity in, again, hosting this breakfast. As everyone knows, the Greater Newport Area Chamber of Commerce sponsors the breakfast, and in behalf of everyone, I'd like to recognize Dan Pellerin, who is the Vice President of the Vermont North Country Chamber of Commerce, and without whose able assistance these breakfasts wouldn't take place. Dan? If there is anyone here who did not receive electronic notice of and would like to receive those notices, please make sure that Dan has your email address before leaving today. As always, we're appreciative of the members of the press who are here today making these proceedings available to those folks who, first of all, like to sleep in, and second of all, who can't make it. Now, I have been requested to ask that each of the legislators indicate, well, obviously we'll indicate your name, but also that you indicate the town and/or cities that you represent. And because of the fact that I am well noted for getting wrong committee assignments, I would ask that each legislator also tell us the committee or committees upon which they serve. And so I would like to start, and usually you start with the Senate, but today I'm just feeling a little different, and I'm going to start with the House. So I'd like to call upon Representative Mark Higley.
Well, thank you, Bill, and thank you, folks. I didn't realize I'd be first up, but one thing I'd like to show you, and we can't do this on the floor of the House because you can't use props, but so this right here is the new rules in regards to building energy standards for commercial buildings. This right here is the new rules for residential building energy standards. I sit on LCAR, so these rules are going to be in place of the 2020 energy standards. During our discussion on the housing bill, S-100, I put in an amendment to add a testimony as well from architects, builders, you name it. I put in an amendment to hold off on these new building energy standards for 2 years, which many of them in here say that these standards will increase the cost of a house anywhere between $18,000 and $28,000. There's things in here that are, you have to create an electrical system in your house now that will require that your house would be completely electrified and be able to withstand, a new panel for that. There's things in here for new insulation, new U values, new setups for electric vehicles and all that sort of stuff. So again, that's just one real quick thing. I always like to talk a little bit about some of the things that are necessary and that I support down there. So I sit on government operations and military affairs, and I guess I failed to mention too that I sit now in a 2-seat district with Representative Marcotte, so that's Lowell J, Westfield, Troy, and Eden, and Irisburg, Coventry, and Newport Town. So just to give you an idea, and I won't go through all these, but there's 26 bills here that our Government Operations and Military Affairs Committee took up. A lot of them are important things that have to do with town charters. It's important. Sports betting. Well, then there's other issues about divestment from fossil fuels from state pensions. The OPR bill, Office of Professional Regulation, Brattleboro Charter, where they allowed 16 and 17-year-olds to vote. The list goes on there, but one of the ones that really got me was after the Senate came in and talked about their S-39, which is the legislative pay increase and benefits for us. We had just had the same legislator, senator, in a while before talking about the sheriff's bill. And you may have heard that there's a lot of issues with a lot of the sheriffs throughout Vermont and what they were trying to do to, make sure that there's some issues around their being the same in the sense of what they do, what they create for their budgets and that sort of stuff. And they were criticized at the time for Caledonia County Sheriff giving out $400,000 worth of bonuses and pay increases for their 16 employees. Well, it sounds terrible, but again, there were 16 employees, and over the past 3 years, there's no benefits, there's no health care insurance, there was no bonuses and all that, and that's what the individual did. So the senator mentioned how no other organization in the state of Vermont can be so generous to themselves in regards to bonuses and increases in pay, yet S-39 gave ourselves, legislators, a 50% raise by 2027. It also would bring in us to have 1 day a week pay for every week that we're not in session, eligible for state health care, and so on. And I guess, again, my frustration down there is the majority has a supermajority ruling. And there's a process down there. And that bill should have come through crossover. There's a certain date that bills have to come through. Didn't meet crossover. Matter of fact, we got it in May 19th. April 19th. And it was taken up, and we only had like 3 days to look at it. And my point there is there's a process for a reason. And it's not being adhered to down there. The majority has that majority ability, and again, it's certainly frustrating. It's amazing too. So we had a paid family and sick leave bill that came out that was just, had to do it. I mean, it's going to save Vermont from itself and workers and so on and so forth. And then we also had a child care bill. Well, at the very end, last day, there was a compromise between the House and Senate on the child care bill, and the paid family and sick leave fell by the wayside. Again, there was an issue around how's it going to be paid for, whether it's through an income tax or payroll tax. That was resolved, but the paid family sick leave may come up next year. I already talked about the housing bill. Things like, there was $32 million set aside for PCB testing of all schools in Vermont, and lo and behold, Burlington needed $13 million of that for remediation of their school over there. So we halted the program and are going to dish out the money to Burlington and the few that have already had some study around remediation. I apologize for being so cynical, but again, I've worked hard in my committee. I had one bill on the wall. It was a Convention of States resolution. I had asked the chair numerous times if he could give me 15 or 20 minutes to present it. I was told I could, maybe after crossover, whatever it was. It never happened, folks. So again, when I sit there as the ranking member and work hard on all these bills, 30 bills or so, and they won't give me 15 or 20 minutes to, I understand it's not going to get passed. I understand that. I tell him that. And he says, well, it might ruffle feathers. There's too many people that don't like it. It might ruffle feathers. And I said, you know the number of bills down here that have ruffled my feathers? Again, folks, I represent a rural constituency, and I try to tell them what I mean. The bill that we just passed in regards to child care allows somebody making 550%. I may have these wrong because everything is in flux until the last day. 550% of your poverty level. That's a family of four making $165,000 a year is going to qualify for subsidies of some sort. Again, I've never seen $165,000 a year or even close. We as Northeast Kingdom legislators do our best to try to make those folks understand down there what it's like, and they don't get it. Thank you.
Mike Marcotte.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming to this final legislative breakfast of this session. Again, thank you, Bill. Thank you to the Chamber for hosting this, and thank you for also the media for coming out and covering this to get the message out to everyone. And thank you to North Country Hospital for sponsoring this today. As Mark said, he and I are district mates now. I won't go through the litany of towns that we represent again, but I also chair the House Commerce and Economic Development Committee. So this year we were quite busy on a lot of different issues, consumer protection issues that we continue to work on with data privacy, also with unemployment and workers' comp changes that we've made, and also in workforce and economic development, we, I think, wound up with about $40 million worth of dollars going out to VSAC, to the state college systems to help provide forgivable loans to teachers coming into the system so that if they, once they graduate, they stay in Vermont, come and teach at one of our schools, that they will get $5,000 in loan forgiveness for every year that they teach. So We hope to see that as a plus. We've also provided more dollars to University of Vermont for their upskilling program, $1.25 million. We also provided another $1.25 million to the Office of Engagement at the University of Vermont. What that does is continues a program we started last year that provides $5,000 for 2 years for any graduate in the state of Vermont. Doesn't matter if they're part of the system, part of Champlain College, any private college. It's available to them. The program was just stood up in the last month for the monies that we appropriated last year. In the first month, it was already a quarter subscribed to. So that was about 100 students in less than a month that have signed up for that. So it's 100 students staying here in Vermont for at least 2 years in order to get that $5,000. And what that money does is help provide the gap that students could receive by leaving the state and going to another state to work. So it covers that gap. Invested a lot of money in these students just to bring them to Vermont. The schools have, the state has. They're already here. They have some housing. So we see it as a plus win. One good thing that did happen in committee of conference in the budget was that we were finally able to get rid of the remote worker program, where we were paying dollars out to people to get them try to move here. We finally were able to stop that program and actually put more, hopefully put more money into trying to keep people here while we try to also figure out the housing problem. As Mark mentioned, we at the last minute on Friday, we came to an agreement on the child care bill. The sticking point between the House and the Senate was how to raise the money, which revenue source would we use. I think the House position was that we use an income tax. I was dead set against the income tax for a few reasons. Last year we changed the tax code for large corporations that manufacture in the state of Vermont but do not sell anything in Vermont. So we changed the code last year so they don't have to pay an income tax to the state of Vermont. So that would have left them out. They wouldn't be paying for it. And so we're talking about companies like Global Foundries, GE, Husky, who employ a lot of people who would benefit from this child care program that was instituted. Also, nonprofits don't pay for any of that as well. They have no income tax. So it would have left out all our hospitals, would have left out all our municipalities, state government, all nonprofits and they don't pay any income tax. It would have caught all of our retirees who pay an income tax. They would have wound up paying for this as well. Instead, we finally opted for the Senate version, which was a payroll tax. And in my view, much more fair, a much better way of doing it because it does function as a workforce development issue. So it made sense to me that our businesses and our employees would be paying a piece of this. So it's a 0.44% payroll tax on everyone's paychecks. 75% is paid by the business, 25% is paid by the employee. And so in the end, I supported this. We took a lot of testimony over the years in my committee on the reasons why we need child care, early childhood education and child care. And I see it as an investment in the state of Vermont, an investment in our workforce, an investment in our kids. So with that, I'll leave it there. I know there's others that need to speak, so thank you.
Representative Brian Smith.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Dan, for having this again. I'd like to see bigger crowds, but this is a pretty good crowd. But before I start complaining about what happened in Montpelier this year, I'd like to thank Jackie Young for helping me not have to go to grade 13 at North Country High School. She was my English teacher, and thank heavens for Jackie Young. Anyway, congratulations, Chris, by the way. Our budget went up this year. I'm energy and environment. The overall budget went up 13.3% over last year. 21 million in motor vehicle fees. It's a 20% increase in motor vehicle fees. I'm just going to go down this list of what I put together. Child care subsidies, like I believe Mark had mentioned, $165,000. It's $172,000. That's what I got. But no, a family of 4 making $172,000 a year will be entitled. That's the way it goes. We spoke of S5 at our last meeting here, which was the clean heat standard, clean heat bill, the Unaffordable Heat Act, whatever anybody wants to call it. In our select board meetings in Derby, I like to see people there. If there's a complaint or a concern, I like to see both sides, you know, the pros for and the pros against and vice versa, be able to defend themselves. But the 2 representatives that voted in favor of S5 apparently didn't feel important enough that it be important enough to be here today. And I would love to hear the press ask them why they voted in favor of S5. I don't think you're going to get any good answers. It's just going to cost a lot of people a lot of money over time. In my committee, House Bill 126 was the Resilience and Biodiversity Act. It's calling for 30% of all of Vermont's lands to be preserved by 2030 and 50% by 2050. Northeast Kingdom right now is 43% in 23, so I think we've done our job pretty well. Chittenden County is 8%. And in defense of Chittenden County, they don't have the room to preserve land because everything is pretty well tied up. But I had asked our committee if they would consider the districts reporting back and letting us know how each district is progressing. And that fell by the wayside. But I guess it can still be found later on down the road. But if I could see Chittenden County grow to 10% or 11% of preservation, that would make me feel better about us being already at 43%. Our bottle bill I voted in favor of. It's going to be a good cleanup act, and I talked to a few people around. I spoke with Mike about it, and I spoke with our only big returnable center in Derby, and Butch Thompson didn't have any problems with the bill, so I kind of agreed with him on it. And the last one I want to talk about is H48. I'm sorry that this bill didn't go anywhere. I got a lot of promises from my committee. H48 is the bill we requested the state of Vermont to pursue an alternative site for a landfill. I won't talk ill about Casella. I think they're probably one of the best scrutinized, best inspected landfills, probably on this side of the Mississippi River, but it doesn't change the fact that they built it or continued it to grow on one of our tributaries that comes into this lake. I had a lot of promises saying that it would be brought up and taken up and taken up, and I think I even told Dump that it was going to be taken up, and at the last minute, oh, we can't do that. So it's still on our wall in our committee room, and hopefully it'll be brought up again next January. I don't intend to leave it alone. So that's pretty much it, and if anybody has any questions, you don't need to be in my district to call me, but please feel free to. Thank you.
Representative Page.
Well, I guess on the 11th, our COVID pandemic was terminated. It's no longer in effect. And we seem to be getting back to some sort of economic normalcy. I'm on the Appropriations Committee, and there are some very good things that we've done, but, you know, there's always the good and the bad. And I thought I would cover some of these issues. We have an $8.5 billion budget, and as I said, it does some good things for clean water, transportation, investments in housing, workforce, economic development, that sort of thing. Our housing, we have spent $211 million for housing assistance, support programs, and continued development of affordable homes. You'll see on the news where there's a lot of people that are upset that it didn't go far enough. And I'm referring to the hotel voucher program here. We've had this program since the COVID day, since the beginning of COVID, and it's time to terminate it and move on and to find some other way of supporting our homeless. And the other issue is we're not getting federal monies to continue with the hotel voucher program. So we have to move on, and as I said, there is money set aside for housing. It's difficult to get that housing built right now because all you know about the workforce, we don't have a workforce. Things are more expensive today than they were a few years ago, but we have to move on. S100 was also part of the housing issue where it made some changes to Act 250. The governor was pleased with it, but he thought it should go further. I didn't vote for S100 because I thought it had more regulations that affected our towns and villages and might, in fact, change the character of our towns and villages by some of the changes of that bill. And of course, it did also provide some housing requirements as well. Another thing that we've done in appropriations, provider rate increases, $99.7 million. Here again, I think this is a very good thing for increasing of dental rates, for adult dental services, increasing the rates for primary care, specialty care, FQHCs. Our clinic rates have increased. EMS, our ambulance rates have also increased. So there's a number of rate increases for our mental and our medical personnel. Transportation. The transportation fund fee was increased. We have $8 million there, and it'll be $21 million annualized. It's a 20% increase in all fees. The governor did not care for it. I didn't vote for it as well because there was no need to increase those rate increases. There just wasn't a need, and so you'll probably see some more on that. Capital construction, as far as Newport goes, we have the state correctional facility, which is going to be getting $3.5 million for planning and construction of a better boiler system, and also Newport Courthouse replacement for planning and design, $500,000 there. Have no idea where it's going. It'll probably go in the hole in the ground eventually if they ever find a way to agree on it. I'm not crazy about that idea, but we'll see how it goes. BIPOC, the Black, Indigenous people of color, and New Americans. There will be a Truth and Reconciliation Commission and Land Access and Opportunity Board that's been funded. I'm sure in the future we'll see things regarding reparations for our Indigenous peoples and as well as African Americans. S39, the comp bill, compensation bill. I voted against this, obviously. I didn't think it was fair that as a legislator, that I am privileged enough to vote for my own pay raise and increase my pay, particularly when my constituents don't have that ability to do so. The frustrating thing that I find down there in Montpelier is that there are oftentimes amendments that are provided to these bills. And for this bill in particular, there were some amendments that were asked to be considered. One such amendment was that we don't give ourselves a pay raise. We don't vote ourselves a pay raise. We let a committee, perhaps, look at the possibility of raising what we're compensated for in the future, rather than just going ahead and giving ourselves a pay raise. That seemed fair to me, and I voted for that. There was also another issue regarding when we go down there, we can stay in, we can rent rooms. And generally, you get a group of people that will rent a room together, legislators renting a room together. Their per diem is fully paid for, even though they're sharing the cost of the rent for that particular room. And there was an amendment that went forward that we are only paid what we actually have to pay for our rental. But that didn't go anywhere. So you see some of the things that we're up against. I will briefly just say that the S5, the Affordable Heat or Unaffordable Heat Act, whatever you want to call it, there were some amendments that Mark Higley, Representative Higley, put forward. One was to, well, there was just some amendments that were related to it. And as far as S5, I voted against it. The Public Utility Commission is going to be starting crafting their legislation for the future. And on that committee, there are no elected officials that are on that committee. They're individuals that are appointed, you know, and I didn't think that was right. Emergency communications. As many of you know, we used to have an emergency communication system here up at the old, or up at the State Police Barracks. There's been given out up to $4.5 million to pilot a new regional dispatch center or expand capacity at existing regional dispatch centers. That hasn't been decided what we're going to do. So who knows, we could very well have our dispatch center back here. We'll see what happens. Human Services, Food Bank, $3 million. Preventing child abuse, $300,000. Prevention and recovery from, you know, drug addiction, $4 million. Recovery centers. There's a whole slew of things that this budget has done that's good, but also, as I mentioned, some of the negative things. The child care, the governor had, here's the other thing. The governor had a plan, $50 million in child care subsidies. He had a plan, he offered it. The opposition didn't even want to hear it. They went ahead with their own plans. And as Representative Marcotte said, the payroll tax, it's going to be not just for employers, but it's also going to be for employees. It's going to be $4.2 million to set up, and it'll be approximately $82 million annually. I will say this, you know, I'm a child, I went to Head Start growing up as a kid, and I realized how important education is. If you want to make it in this world, and I think I am where I am because of my educational background. And, but this program is just too expensive. And I think the governor needed to be heard, and we also needed to look at his program. And I'm getting the evil eye from Bill, so I'm going to leave it at that. So thank you very much.
Larry Labor.
Then I could talk a lot less. Good morning. Thank you. for inviting us here. My name is Larry Labor, for those who haven't met me. I want to read to you 12 towns, because I have the biggest district in the state geographically, and probably the least densely populated. I started at Beecher Falls to go down through Canaan, then Leamington, then Norton, then Island Pond, then Averill, then Holland, Morgan, Charleston's. Who am I forgetting? Oh, the Gores, all three of them. That's the least densely populated. I'd like to bring back to you some issues that are going to have an impact on the Northeast Kingdom that I did act on. One of them was for landlords who do rental properties. So I did contact some landlords to find out what the issues might be, because it had been brought to my attention. But apparently when utilities do a disconnect on, say, electricity, even though the tenant was responsible for the electrical bill, only the landlord got noticed. Well, that's not a good thing, as was demonstrated by one particular circumstance. A party was moved out of one of the properties in January. In February, the disconnect was done then, but the landlord didn't know it. Tenant was responsible for that one. February, the cold snap came. All the water pipes froze, and that was an upstairs apartment. Ruined that one, ruined the one below it. So that was a very expensive bill. And not just the restoration of them, but the loss of revenue because they couldn't be rented for a while. So I worked on that one. It was called H21. Did get it passed. There was one for the R side. There were damn few of those. The interview list, or the witness list, was not very long. Green Mountain Power, Vermont Electric Co-op, the proposer of the bill, and 2 other reps from the Northeast Kingdom. I was a co-sponsor. I was happy to work on it. Woody Page was the original sponsor. It took some politicking. You had to prove to the utilities that this was going to be a benefit for them also. Well, then you get the PUC involved. So yes, it did pass. All bills mostly would be coming on July 1st. But the PUC is not regulated by the legislators. They're not elected. They're appointed. They make the rules. So they negotiated till January 1st, 24. So they got the whole summer and fall to do the regs on this. And a lot of it has to do with privacy. People have a right to expect the protection that their accounts aren't going to become public. So you can do that by either meter numbers and on intake forms. Interesting. It was an interesting trip, let's put it that way. S5, I voted against it and all but 2 Northeast representatives voted against it. It's not fair for people in the northern part of the state and those in the least populated part of the state to foot the bill. It doesn't work well. It does work, but it doesn't work well. I also proposed and I probably mentioned this once before, an EV charging bill. Right now we're subsidizing all of them. None of them are paying any gas tax. There's over 8,000 of them. That bill is stuck on the wall. It's not even in my committee, but couldn't move it. I did help one of my small towns. They needed a charter change and funding to create a hiking trail up Mount Monadnock. parking area, that kind of stuff. That's in Leamington, a town of about 100 people. The next one I helped out was another charter change, and that was in the Unified Towns and Gores, the 3 Gores. They needed a charter change so that they, like many of us, they're aging out. They have no more listers. Well, you can't just, the select board just can't go out and hire a lister. It's more complicated than that. You gotta get the charter change, you gotta bring it to the town meeting and get the voters to change it, approve the change, and then you can go search for one. That was inserted. My bill was staying on the wall, but I got it inserted in another bill, sort of like what we call a Christmas tree bill, and that got passed. So now they can have their town meeting in March, and they can legally go out and search for a new lister / appraiser on a contract basis, so long as they've been certified. Yes, Bill, I see the hook coming. Medicaid. We did secure Medicaid increase in rates to equal Medicare. There's probably more on this paper, but the hook is getting longer, so I will yield the floor. Thank you, Bill.
With the lighting being as wonderful as it is in this facility, I just want to double check and make sure that all representatives have had the opportunity to speak before we move to the Senate. Okay, Senator Starr.
Thank you, Bill. Want to congratulate Chris on being Principal of the Year. He was our principal out in Troy for quite a few years and did a good job for us. And I know he's doing a good job here at the high school. And I want to welcome the new CEO at our hospital, which is very important to all of us. I guess I'm a little more optimistic than my fellow legislators. You know, I don't see the world coming to an end tomorrow. And I always try to find the bright side of things instead of the dimmer side. And, you know, one thing that no one has talked about, well, I guess I better back up. I'm Bobby Starr from Troy. I represent Orleans County with the exception of Newport, Derby, Holland, along the northern border. And I also represent 4 towns down in Caledonia County. I've been a rep, and now I'm the senator for Orleans County. But one thing that hasn't been mentioned that we did that was, I think, really positive was passing the Universal School Meals Program. So all of our children, regardless of who they are, where they're from, if they go to a public school in Vermont, they're going to eat breakfast if they need it, and they're going to have hot lunch if they want it. And, you know, the reports that I've worked on that for 6 or 7 years, because you don't do anything down there usually overnight. It takes a lot of coaching and prodding, and but every person that we had in, from school administrators to hot lunch people to parents and even the children, thought that that was such a great deal to get done and passed, and there's no more stigma tied up in little Johnny didn't have money, or the kids don't go home and hear the parents fighting over the $200 hot lunch bill that they got to send a check or the kids can't eat. So then anyways, that got passed. We did a 5% increase for our Northeast Kingdom mental health, or the mental health agencies around the state, as well as the VNAs, which all of us, when we get to a certain age, need the VNAs, and so that'll keep them around. The child care bill, we've heard quite a bit about that from other reps. The average person with a payroll tax, and the reason in the Senate we didn't go with an income tax is because that would take in elderly people and people on retirement, and it was the people working and the employers that hired these people that were supporting the bill. And so the average person, I believe it was around, now this is a year in what it's going to cost them at that .004, about $250. So, you know, I don't see where it's going to rob anybody of a lot, but it's going to get these children into proper, well-run daycare centers and try to get them ready to go to preschool. And, you know, you talk with teachers and they say, well, if we can only get those kids to the 4th grade, you know, we've got it made. It's those little primary grades where the schools and the teachers are having such a rough time. I met with a group of lake folks that own property around the lakes, and A&R was going to discontinue the Lakewise person that goes around and helps them organize cleanup of the lakes, you know, the weeds and junk, and we did get that funded. The PCBs, I know I've been on the phone pretty steady with Chris off and on, went to, via satellite, of course, one of their meetings last week. North Country's got a serious problem with that, and we do have, I mean, they talked about Burlington getting most of the money. Well, they're flattening their school because it isn't worth trying to save. So sure, we had to give them extra money to help tear the $16 million, because it's going to cost about 22 to tear that down, get rid of the contamination. But there's 13 million left for like North Country, and I sit on appropriations in the Senate and have been assured by my fellow committee members that when we go back in January, if there isn't enough money to cover that, we're going to cover it. So North Country's going to be in good shape, I think, with that. I know I'm running out of time, but you started me at the end. But I chair agriculture as well as serving on appropriations, and you know, we got our working lands bill passed, we got our ag development bill passed, organic dairy farmers are going to get a little help because they had such a bad year, so we're helping them at a tune of $6.9 million. Ag Sustainable Jobs Fund we got passed. Actually, we passed all of our bills, and you know, we do have a large budget, but it's only due to the federal money that came floating in, and there was some mention about the motor vehicle fees going up, but that $20 million that's going to cost all of us a little more for everything is going to bring $80 million of federal money in, so we're going to have that 20 is going to make $100 million for keep our roads and bridges and all that. So And I think Russ will probably report more on transportation stuff and the institution. So, thank you, yes.
Senator Ingalls.
So I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank everybody for coming all year long. I think the biggest part of making sure that politics works really well is to have people come, show up, make their voices heard, and reach out. And I will say it, and you've heard me say it before, you are very well represented in the kingdom. We work hard, and my my seatmate Bobby works hard. All my representatives that are representing you guys work hard. There's not a time where we're not aware of what's going on. There's not a concern that they're not going to spend the money in Montpelier. They're going to spend the money. Our job is to make sure that it comes back here consistently at a fair and equitable basis. I serve on transportation. Transportation passed nearly a $1 billion budget. We're still after things as far as major infrastructure, anything that can do a fundamental change. We were very proud to put back more monies to towns this year for those nagging problems that just couldn't seem to ever get ahead of, whether it be paving, whether it be that bridge, whether it be a new boiler system in the town hall. We were able to fund more monies back into that. The party is over with a lot of this money. We spent $10 billion in a little over 5 years. We still have a burn rate through 2027. So it's very, very important that we still keep the focus on fixing these problems that are transformational within our state. We're going to pave more roads this year than we have in the past. I think we're on the 11th year of spending over $100 million on paving. We're probably $130 million on paving, more bridges, everything. So that's pretty big there. I'm also the chair of institutions. As Bobby had referenced, monies that come available through the federal dollars that are disappearing. Working closely with his committee, we were able to have $27 million of match money secured in our institutions budget that leveraged $320 million federal dollars. The House had taken that monies away with ideas that, well, we'll figure out how to do that. But when you can spend $27 million and you can get $320 million back, it's kind of a no-brainer. We also, there's a lot of projects out there. Towns are trying to make sure that they're not dumping their effluences into our lakes. We had another $20 million that the House had tried to take away, and we got back most of all of that. And what that did is there was a lot of communities out there. They just don't decide they're going to do something. It takes a long time, and you have to twist voters' arms. You have to make sure the money's there. And we had 20 communities at town meeting finally pulled the trigger because they were pretty much guaranteed that the state's portion of the bill to help them get started would be there, and that got taken away. And again, between Bobby's Appropriations Committee and Institutions Committee, we were able to do that. Because North Country is sponsoring this, I want to spend a little time on what we're doing for them. I was the lead sponsor of S36 after listening to North Country and listening to NVRH and just hearing the overall dangers that were going on and the total disrespect to our heroes in the healthcare field. We thought that it was really time to put some teeth into protecting them. I wish we could do more, and I think we will do more, but this is a good start in the right direction. At least it could bring another layer of security to keep our heroes safe. I don't sign on to many bills. I don't sponsor many bills. I'm just not down there to make new laws. I try to be effective on what I do. The other one that I co-sponsored and was a big part of was the catalytic converter bill. As you know, those are getting stolen about as fast as they can put them on. And we finally got a bill out there that if somebody gets stopped and they have a catalytic converter, or if they had 10 catalytic converters in their vehicles, they have to show where those came from. And it was really just kind of funny to me that you read in the paper about 15 catalytic converters get stolen, and they show up at the junkyard the next day, and nobody would even have a clue. Oh, all shiny catalytic converters. I wonder where they got those from. So we finally put a bill in there to make it easier to be able to track those, to be able to have the sheriffs and state police and municipalities be able to do that. In institutions, we spend a lot on state colleges. And one of the programs I'm most proud about is we're graduating over 400 nurses now within that program. We are putting in these high-tech labs where these mannequins or dummies or whatever you might want to call them are so high-tech that you can program them to either give birth or to have a heart attack or whatever scenario that you might want to do. And it allows more, and these things are so real that if you do something wrong, they actually will say, ow, or they'll say something to let you know. So I think we've got 8 more of those labs going in. I think we have 8, but they're expensive. But it's very, very important. It just gives real time instead of waiting for a patient and to have people gathered around at that point in time, which is very, very hard because you just don't know when somebody's going to have a heart attack. You don't know when a lot of that stuff. So to have real-time training is very, very important. And hopefully the amount of nurses that we're graduating will make a difference, and hopefully we can keep them here in the state of Vermont. I want to congratulate Mr. Young. His family's got a strong tradition of education in the kingdom. I can remember when you came back into the kingdom, and I was just, even then, even not even being where I was right now, just so proud that somebody who had been raised here came back and was not only given the opportunity, but took the opportunity when you had many choices to go elsewhere, but you came back to serve the kingdom, probably at a lesser rate of where you could have been elsewhere, and we really appreciate that very much. Yeah, so I see Mr. Davies is up and going and ready to go. But again, I want to thank everybody for your advocacy as far as to let it be known everything that's important to you. We fight for you. We have to do better. Our voter turnout is really, really, really poor. Just remember that it does make a difference if you go and pull the lever for your candidate. We need more bodies down there. We need more help. Our lifestyle in Vermont is under attack, and it's not like it's going for the better. If you want to be like California or you want to be like Massachusetts, then we got to keep on going the way that we're going. But I do know that we can muster the troops up, and we can make a difference if we all just show up. Thank you very much.
Our first question or comment is from Terry DeFazio.
I'll make this very, very short. This is Terry DeFazio from Newport City. I would like to know the legislators' opinion on House Bill H305. I personally am against it.
Okay, which representative would like to start off? Well, Representative Page, since you have a piece of paper, let's start with you.
I'm not familiar with 305. It says this bill increases cost fees for working Vermonters and authorizes pharmacists and pharmacy technicians to give COVID and flu shots to 5-year-olds. I would assume that giving those shots to 5-year-olds has the approval of the parents. I'm not crazy about increasing costs for pharmaceuticals for our people that are ill, and so I would oppose this bill as it's written. Larry, you probably, can I refer this to Larry since he's a no? Okay.
Any other legislator care to comment on that question or comment? Okay. Representative Smith.
Thank you, Bill. I didn't know what the number was, but Representative Page explained it. I heard a little bit about this last week, and I don't think that 5-year-olds should be getting these shots. So I would oppose that bill just probably for that purpose alone.
Any other legislator care to comment?
Having spent most of my life in a pharmacy, this is not so much about age, this is about parental control. The other aspect is not about dollars. Most of the shots that are given in a pharmacy are paid for by Medicare or Medicaid. So it's a matter of access. If you can't hit a clinic because of the hours of staffing available for the clinic, then you can get backed up on, for instance, a pandemic. So we're going to be living with a constant pandemic, not just COVID pandemic. There are going to be more disease states. And as our healthcare systems get loaded with the effort of maintaining immunizations, that causes more of an increase in staffing, which is at the present difficult to achieve with any economic certainty. Hopefully some of those 400 nurses that are graduating will be coming back to the Northeast. We need them. But we're in competition with Berlin, but we're in competition with 11 other hospitals in the state. Most are in a better economic area, and therein lies part of the problem. So it's a matter of access, it's a matter of maintaining parental control, and you have your anti-vaxxers out there. This is a choice thing, not a mandatory.
Mr. Roy.
Good morning, Chris Roy, Newport Daily Express. Does anybody know about S-157, which is an act relating to harassment, hazing, and bullying prevention in schools?
Any legislator care to comment? Okay, Senator Starr.
Thank you, Bill. Chris, I don't believe that bill has come out of education or judiciary at this point in time. Really haven't heard a whole lot in regards to that, just to pass it on.
Okay, that brings us pretty much to the end of this morning's legislative breakfast. I'd like to thank the Eastside Restaurant, North Country Hospital, Wendy Franklin, Dan Pellerin, the Vermont North Country Chamber of Commerce, and all the members of the press for making these proceedings available to those who are not here, and also extend appreciation to all the attending legislators. It's been my privilege to have moderated these breakfasts for over 50 years. It is now time for someone else to take over serving as moderator. I've certainly enjoyed moderating them, but as stated, it's time for someone else to have a turn. I'd now like to turn the meeting over to Dan Pellerin, who has a few words he would like to share.
So, we'd like to thank him, and I could only go back 40 plus years. I couldn't verify over 50 because I think they didn't have writing back then or something. So, yeah. But and Woody, was the email that were you able to do the? resolution. So there's also going to be a resolution in the House honoring you for your years of service doing this also. So again, on behalf of everyone here, the years of doing this, we thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you very much. I have to say that I think the only person here who was at the legislative breakfasts when I first started moderating them was Senator Starr, and that was before he became a representative. If I recall correctly, there was a meeting at the North Troy Hotel, and I don't remember his name, but there was somebody from Lowell, I believe it was, who was the representative of that district, and then Bobby became the representative. So that, just a few years ago. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, wait, there's more you want to present. Yeah. Bill, you can't leave yet.
There's more. We have a resolution for you, Bill. And if I could have all the representatives and senators come up here, and I'll just quickly read it. It says, community forums where state legislators can engage with their constituents on the issues of the day are of great civic importance. And at these venues, voters gain an improved familiarity with major topics currently being deliberated at the State House, and conversely, legislators learn their constituents' opinions on these matters. And a model example of such gatherings is the Northeast Kingdom Legislative Breakfast Series, convened every spring in Newport. And for over 40 years, William Davies has moderated these eagerly anticipated sessions, and he always ensures that they are most informative and timely, and that they epitomize the highest standard of civil discourse. And whereas William Davies facilitates a community dialogue that showcases the vibrancy of democracy in Vermont, and especially in the Northeast Kingdom, and the attendees at these programs are grateful to William Davies for his many years serving in this special role. Now therefore be it resolved that the House of Representatives, that the General Assembly honors William Boyd Davies for more than 4 decades of insightfully moderating the Northeast Kingdom Legislative Breakfast Series in Newport. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Turn that around so the camera can see it.
Thank you.
Way to go, Bill.
Thank you.
No. And there you go. There's a copy of the resolution.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Sure you don't want to change your mind?
Well, been a long haul.
Yes, it is. Yes. And I remember very clearly.
Yeah, we're the
Very beginning. Very beginning.
Thank you, everyone. We're officially concluded. Till next year. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.